is it going to tell me if I'm recording or not? I think it's, yep. Okay, good. Great. Now I've got me, not sure if I can have started the recording at the beginning of the recording. So much for a lovely lead in. So I'm Jerry Ford. I'm the director of the Minnesota Premium Garlic Project, and this is our second field day, virtual field day, that we are doing as part of the project, along with a whole series of other events and programs and resources for folks. And we would like to also welcome our host farmers here. You can see Tom and Maria Coffman there in one of those frames on your computer or device. And we're actually going to let them introduce themselves and talk about their farm via video with the farm in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that video in my totally professional manner here, that hopefully that'll happen right away. Tom and Maria, you can say hello if you like while I'm finding that video.
Hello, welcome everybody. Hope you get something out of it.
Good morning, everybody.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, I got interested in farming when I was a teenager, young teenager. I worked for a truck farmer up on the Minnesota River bottoms in the south part of the metro, and we raised a lot of garden crops, sweet corn, cabbage, vine crops, peppers, cukes. And back then it was the early 70s, and the starting pay was 90 cents an hour, and I guess when you're 12 or 13, that was a good job, and you got a check every week for about $30–40, and you had some money. So that got me interested in the ag field, and went to U of M, got a soils and agronomy degree, and got started with the USDA out of school, working for the Soil Conservation Service in Rochester. Then moved over to Owatonna area, and while in Rochester I met my wife Maria, who's a nurse, and we moved to Owatonna, got married, knew some people out here in the West Concord area, and the farmer that bought this particular farm didn't need the building site, so he offered it to us. So we bought a 6-acre building site in 1983, and from there we just always had a big garden, and decided to plant some apple trees. We got 30 Honeycrisp apple trees out there. Kids, we had 3 children, raised chickens and ducks and geese, and gave them some hobbies. And then along towards the 90s, Maria, how did it go with our neighbor, Sister Julia?
So our neighbor, Sister Julia, who was a missionary in Africa for part of her life, she actually came home to help take care of her elderly parents, who are our neighbors. And so we got to know her and befriend her, and she was very interested in garlic and growing healthy foods and eating healthy, and so she is the one who introduced us to garlic, and it's taken off from there.
At about that same time, I did recall hearing a clip on Paul Harvey News back in the 90s about raising garlic and how it's a high value crop on a small parcel. And so I thought, you know, with the kids becoming teenagers or before they got driving, this might be a good hobby for them to earn some money. We were raising some green beans, selling them to a local restaurant, and the kids would help pick them, and we'd take a couple 5-gallon pails up to the restaurant, and they'd get a few dollars out of that. But so we started the garlic in 2000, I believe, was our first crop, and so this would be our 20th, I guess. And I went to started reading up on it, and talked with Joel Gerardin up in Cannon Falls and told him I wanted to buy 50 pounds of garlic. And he said, well, that's a lot. He said, why don't you start with 15? So he sold me 5 pounds of Enchilium red, 5 pounds of Russian red, and 5 pounds of music. And so that probably got us 500-600 plants, and we started from there. And the nice thing about garlic, you could just kind of build your own production with keeping back your seed. So we started doing that, and kids would help, and we'd split the profit 3 ways. And then it was turning out that our son, who was a little farmer boy at the time, really got into it, and the 2 girls were not so interested in it. And so then I thought, all right, we're gonna, second and third year, or however that went, we'll pay by the hour, $12 an hour. And when Allie and Meg got old enough to start working in town, 15, 16, they wanted to work at the pool in West Concord, and they preferred doing that over working on the garlic patch. There they were making about $7 an hour. So Dad's $5 an hour bonus still wasn't good enough for them to get dirty and sweaty, and they'd just soon be at the pool with their friends. But it's worked pretty good, and of course they made some good money, and now that they're gone, we just kept it up because it's a fun hobby, and it's a good money maker. Over the years, we've tried some farmers markets and looked into them, but I really didn't like sitting at a farmer's market for half a day with just garlic for sale. We just kind of specialize in garlic and the apples. We don't have a lot of the other produce we grow is for our own use. So the best market, of course, has been the Garlic Festival in Hutchinson, and prior to that, Howard Lake. That's our main retail event. We really enjoyed that and are going to miss it this year. Yeah. But other than that, we've been in the some of the university bulletins as a seed supplier, also Minnesota Grown Directory, and so yeah, I just soon cater to the people that want to raise garlic and sell pounds rather than bulbs. So if somebody wants 10 or 50 pounds, that's kind of the market we're looking for, versus send me 1 or 2 bulbs type of deal. That gets to be a lot of work. Well, at the Garlic Fest, we would sell by the pound or by the bulb, and we'd kind of grade ours as to a small bulb, which would be like 2 inches or less. Medium bulbs into that 2 1/4, 2 1/2 range, and anything over 2 1/2 would be considered large in my estimation. So certain varieties, then we'd have 3 different sizes of bulbs, and then sell them accordingly, so much per bulb. Word of mouth, I think there's still few people that we know that stop out and buy a pound or 2 or a variety of different bulbs. So we just kind of sell it differently and depending on what they want. Sometimes we get some of that 2-inch garlic that gets kind of small. Nobody wants the real small stuff, so we'll let that go at a decent price. So. Value added, we've experimented with black garlic, and just for our own use, we do make some scape pesto with the garlic scapes. That's about it. We haven't got into processing anything value added for sale yet.
Just our own personal use. I have made pickled garlic, and we really do enjoy the scape pesto, though. That is one of our favorites.
That is? Can you?
Scape pesto. So we would take the scapes and we would blenderize them with basil and some Parmesan cheese and a little olive oil and I believe some pumpkin seeds and salt, and it's just a very delicious pesto which we can freeze. So very easy.
All right. Well, I think that's a fun way to do this. It might be a little odd for Tom and Maria sitting there watching themselves talking. Yeah. Well, Becky, is there anything on the chat going on, or do you have a question yourself? I have a couple. Have you ever considered marketing your value-added products?
No, we just had the black garlic cooker that we have is it does like 16 bulbs at a time, and it takes, I believe it's 12 days to process, so we can't get any volume that way, and it's I'm not sure what kind of market is out there. I think we're gonna just stick with the fresh local gourmet garlic right out of the ground.
And another quick question for you, if you're willing to say, and of course you will be eventually because you'll be advertising your pricing. You mentioned selling by the bulb, by the pound, but didn't tell us what your pricing is.
We'll be at $12 a pound this year, and that's going to be for the stuff that's in that 2 1/4 plus range for size. Anything that's under 2 inches, we were letting that go for like $6 a pound.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if there are no other questions. I'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next video clip. Hopefully I've got this right.
Well, this is an old cultivator that we use. We've got it set up with 7 shanks, point shanks on an 18-inch spacing. It's a 3-point hitch. We use some old Ford tractors. And this is what we mark the rows with in starting in mid-September, end of September. This is a 1952 Ford 8N, so pushing 70 years, and it still works good. It's got a Sherman transmission, which gears it. It's a 4-speed transmission, but the Sherman gears it 4 low, 4 regular, and 4 high, so it's actually a 12.
Okay, so are we seeing the video? Is that what we're...
Yeah, but the what I'm seeing is the bar on the bottom that shows the sound and the forward and the backwards and the time. Can you get that off? It must be on your end. It's covering the tractor right now. That bar that you're clicking on.
Yeah. Well, let's see if I can do that.
I think if you click I could put it in the low gear and crawl along real slow. This is what we use to lift the garlic. It's just a shank that we run down the row underneath the garlic, and it lifts the plant up. In our soils, we're a silty clay loam, so it does get a little heavier type of ground. I can't pull the stalk out of the ground. I have to lift it to get it out. Paul Schmidt's in that silt loam soil, that's all wind blown. This is kind of a wind blown with the clay, with the till mix, kind of some of each. If I pull it, it breaks the stalk off. Paul could go along and pull his right out because the soil is so loose. Sandy soil, same way, you should be able to pull right out. But this clay soil, it's too tight up on top, and it doesn't open up. So we have to lift. The key with lifting too, I was going to show this. The one key with digging is you want to go straight and not get off the row. So this is a stability bar, so there's not much sideways clay. That keeps it following the straight. It won't draft then. On some years when it's very wet and we can't get in and it's time to lift, sometimes we just resort to the fork, the potato fork, or a heavy tine hay fork, manure fork here, and then you would just dig them by hand, which gets to be a slower process than backbreaking. But like I said, if the weather doesn't allow us to get in with the equipment and it's time to get them out, then we resort to this.
I'm going to take a little pause right there and see, before we launch into the curing shed and all. And I think, Becky, there was a question, but we're probably addressing it later.
Yeah, it was about cover crops, and I assumed that we would get to that later, so we'll wait on that one.
We sure are, and Tom does a really cool job with cover crops. So your row spacing then, Tom and Maria, is really based on the equipment, right?
That's correct. We're set up at 18-inch with that cultivator to mark out our rows. So we plant 6 inches apart in the row, 18 inches between them.
Okay, so yeah, kind of form following function there. Now, when you use that center digger, which if folks aren't familiar with a center digger or middle buster, I think some people call it, there are kind of names for it. It's kind of like a double moldboard plow that a lot of people use it for potato harvesting, for plopping the potatoes over the side. So you're going right in the row with the center of that?
Yeah, I try to straddle the row that I'm digging. I just line it up with the center of the hood and drive down the row. That particular tractor's got a low speed transmission, so I could go real slow and still keep the tractor running.
Yep, some tractors call it a creeper gear.
Yeah, it's actually a Sherman transmission. It's a step up and step down. So. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I ever got along before I got a creeper gear on my tractor. Sometimes have to check and make sure I'm actually still moving. But it's really nice to be able to go real slow. Anything else there, Becky? Okay. Okay. Well, we'll pick up there and talk a little bit about the curing shed.
Jerry, that one just came in. How many plants across your row? You said they were 6 inches apart. How many in a bed?
Well, they're not bed, they're just rows. I mean, my particular plot there it's about 1/4 of an acre, so the rows are maybe 200 feet long. And I got, 28 rows out there right now.
So how many cloves or bulbs are in the ground right now?
I plant about 8,000.
8,000, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to talking about the curing shed while you're standing right there at that, in that location in the video.
Okay, so this is the shed that we do a lot of curing in. We've got hay racks, and I got another set of hay racks with these grates on them. I've got cable. 3 cables are up yet. I put up another one at a lower level. And what we do on the hanging, we'll take, I've got different colored strings. We put about 10 in a bundle, wrap them up, cinch them, and then just made some wire hooks, put a hook on it, and hang it on the wire. Then they kind of sometimes hang different ways, and you need about 3 weeks to get a good dry. And what we started last year, so we'll dry in here, and we'll also dry in the garage. We'll just leave the vehicles out for a few weeks and back in a couple hay racks in there. And what we've done that's really speeded up the process is we're starting to dehumidify. So right now we're probably at a 70%, 75% humidity. Yeah, I got the humidistat over there. It shows 75%. We'll run this, and after a day we could get down to into that 40 to 50% range, and drain the hose right in the drain here, and that keeps it nice and dry, the air in here. We got the ceiling fan. We'll get the ceiling fan going. We've got some other fans we could blow air around, and it speeds the process. When the plants are dry, we'll get several people together. The neighbors, we get the neighbors together and make a big social event out of it. About 4 nights we'll clean garlic. A couple people will be cutting the stems and the roots, and we dump them in here. There's usually a half a dozen people sitting around the table, and what we'll do is we'll just take a brush and brush the dirt off the roots, and then peel 1 layer of skin on the garlic clove. And if they're nice and dry, they could peel by hand. Sometimes right down by the root there's a little bit that doesn't. So we hook up an air compressor to this table, and we have a couple hoses on each end, and a low pressure, probably 20-30 psi, to just blow off those leaves that don't quite come off. And then we grade it accordingly. If it fits through here and it doesn't fit through there, then it's kind of a medium size and it goes in the middle. If it doesn't fit through here, then it's a large. If it goes through there, it's a small. And then we'll bag them up and weigh them, and then hang the bags back up on the hooks. The other key is we want to make sure the sun doesn't get on the garlic, so I'll put some cardboard over the windows, on the tops of the windows, so the sun isn't getting in on the garlic. I do want to show you a couple tools. We had so we'll put the dry garlic in a wheelbarrow of the same variety, and then a couple people will be working on cutting the stems, and got this idea from Melissa up by Kenyon, and these are excellent for cutting garlic. Sometimes we've used snips and what have you, but these really work nice. It's got a replaceable razor, 2-way razor. You could flip it around, kind of a rubber type deal there. Craftsman makes them. Very nice for cutting the stem and trimming the roots. When you're raising garlic, not everything is saleable. Sometimes you get bulbs that maybe if they got in a little crooked, the stem is crooked on them, or there may be some physical damage from bruising or denting, or if the stuff is too small, or if the clove starts to open up, the bulb starts opening up. We just save our bare boxes and then keep the stuff that's not saleable for home use. And then any of our workers too that want garlic, we end up with quite a few pounds of stuff that's not saleable, just like with growing anything. So one thing about, you start taking 8,000 plants out of the ground, it's like, where are you going to put it? And I don't take them all out at once. It's usually about a 2-week digging process. The soft necks and a couple like Susan Marie and Russian Red, they mature first. And so I'll get those out, and then maybe I'll even wait a week before I start digging the others. So I could kind of be moving some stuff around. Once some of that earlier stuff dries down decent, you could stack it better and not worry about it molding. So, but I use a different shed for my seed garlic, just to keep all the seed garlic out of here. And then we use the garage and this facility. So these are the bags that we use once the garlic is dried and cleaned, and we sort them accordingly, small, medium, large, and variety labeled. and then we'll just twist those up and put a hook on them and hang them back up on the rack out of the sun, so they could still dry and cure. Okay, garlic will last till the following spring as far as the soft necks go. The Lourdes Italian and Chilean are the two soft necks I grow. We just got done eating some here in June from last year, the Lourdes Italian. The hardneck garlic, it depends on the growing season and the variety, but usually February, March is about all you could, as far as it goes. Then the clove starts getting real light and the bulb gets light, it loses its moisture, the clove is rubbery, punky kind of, and so keep it out of the cold. So then we'll store it in our garage where it doesn't freeze. Keep it fairly dry and out of the light. So box it or bag it is usually the best way to store it. Cool, dark, dry.
All right. Well, it looks like if I'm there's a couple of interesting things in the chat there. And it looks like Chris Bird went ahead and answered the question about that tool so that we don't have to send one of you out to the shed to grab one and figure out what the name of it is. What else have we got going on there, Becky?
Oh, that was the main question of this section. But I was wondering, those red bags that you had with that white kind of a top, did you order those online or?
Yeah, you know, I've had them for quite a while, and I think they came from Monty Packaging. So yeah, it was an online site, and they hold about 5 to 6 pounds. So they work very nice. I really like them. I just use them from year to year until they degrade, and then I'll, you know, use the newer ones. So.
Wondering what size garlic you keep for seed. What's the size you're looking for?
Yeah, usually you know, when I dig a variety, I'll kind of lay it out and then I'll sort through and I'll pick the biggest plants, biggest bulbs out for seeds. So you get the most cloves that way, and then you get, you know, the biggest cloves. And so it seems like the bigger cloves you really come out of the ground nice in the spring. There's just more energy in it. So even when you open up like a chestnut or a Enchilium or a Lourdes, there's some small cloves in the very middle of the stem of the bulb. I don't plant those because they're too small. But the bigger the bulb is, if we could get 2.5 to 3 inch bulbs, those outside cloves are bigger, and that's just going to give you more energy in the spring for emergence. So.
Well, there's a real advantage, it seems to me, with harvesting of having very different varieties of going from a soft neck all the way up to porcelains with that staggered harvest time. Those of us who are only growing like purple stripe and porcelain, well, it's like everything comes at once. And so I admire you for doing that. That's I probably should do that myself. Mm-hmm. Okay, anything else there, Becky?
That's it so far.
Okay, let me go ahead and cue up we're going to talk a little bit about soil here now. Oops, I'm getting some weird noise at my end. I don't know if somebody needs to mute or... All right, here we go.
All right, this is our garlic producing area. I have 2 parcels, each about 1/4 of an acre. And the soils in this part of the state, we're in a transitional area between the glacial till, the recently glaciated south central Minnesota pothole topography, and then the driftless area of southeast Minnesota where it's wind-blown, silt, lush, big hills. This particular area we don't start seeing a lot of potholes here, so we're transitioning over to the southeast. So it's a silt cap soil mixed in with till over a glacial till base. Maxfield, Marquise, some of the old names were Skyberg and Floyd. But it's a silty clay loam type soil, heavier textured, meaning there's some clay in it. Organic matters are running 4%, so it's fairly decent organic matter. Some of this has been disturbed. There used to be a full barn over here, so every once in a while you see some disturbed soil here. But what I do is when the garlic is lifted, usually by August 1st, I'm done. I will go, and the surface is fairly rough, and it's got a bunch of straw mixed on it, and there's some soil exposed from the digging activity. I'll usually go in and hand seed a cover crop right away, just on top of the ground. Cereal rye, tillage radish, purple top turnip, red clover, and sweet clover. And surprisingly, that catches real good around here, because normally in July and August we're going to get close to 4 inches of rain every month, and that's been pretty decent. I don't need to work the ground up and prepare a seed bed. So what you're looking at over here is last year's seeding. The cereal rye was mowed down here a few weeks ago. The red clover and sweet clover are in there growing. And then what I'll do in end of August, I'll mow this again, and I'll plow it down with the 8N and a 2-bottom plow, kind of to act as a green manure. But from the soil health standpoint, you don't want bare soil for any length of time. And I'm a big believer in the more you could have roots growing in the soil for a longer period of time, the better your soil is going to be from a fertility standpoint, microbiology. The whole biology of the soil feeds on those live roots. So as soon as I plow it, the next day I'll level it and seed oats as a cover crop. And then when I come to mark the rows end of September with that cultivator with the points 18 inches apart, I'll just go right through the oats and mark 7 rows at a time. The ground is fairly loose still, but yet the oats are up 5-6 inches tall, and it isn't real heavy, but there's just a cover there and there's root activity in there. So that would be, so every other year I'm rotating. It's just a 2-year rotation, not ideal. I used to do 3. Then I got a little bit bigger and decided I'd give this 2-year rotation with the cover crop a try, and it's been working pretty good. So prior to this getting garlic again, it's had oats, cereal rye, clover, tillage radish, for at least 16-month period. So it's been a pretty good diverse bunch of roots in the soil prior to that getting garlic again. We could go look at the mulch over here, and it's usually in November I will mulch with, I like to use straw mulch if it's available. This past year I did have some straw mulch that I actually had left over, or I used from that other plot where it was too thick. I had it piled up. And then I also had barley straw, and what I've noticed with that barley straw, that decays down very rapidly. So the trick with mulch is, if you get it on at the right thickness, you're going to have a fairly clean seed bed. So here we got mulch that's probably, into that 2-inch thickness range. When you put this on, it's probably up to a 4-inch thickness, and it packs down. This is a good amount of mulch here, and you can see underneath it's very damp and moist, and cool. And I think that's, again, getting back to soil health, that's one of the principles, keep the soil covered. And if we get our soils too hot, that microbial activity over 100 degrees diminishes. So they're gonna drop down in the soil or basically dry out. And so the mulching, I think, is very important for soil biology and then the weed control. On my soft necks, if I get the mulch too thick, they have a hard time coming through. So in the spring, I need to kind of part the mulch, or let them come up and every day or so walk along and try to pull some. You might have a plant coming through and then a couple that aren't. And you pull the garlic out and there's a kind of a yellow plant laying there that can't get through. So you got to help it along. Couple areas within here, I didn't get the mulch thick enough, and so then the weeds come. So you end up more time weeding.
So I'd like to pause there before we start talking about diseases. And Becky, what do we got for questions?
Well, we're wondering if you could clarify this cover crop rotation. The question was asking about the oats and if you let them winter kill or you're terminating them, and even if you could just walk us through the what month you're doing what, that might help.
Well, as technology would have it, I think we lost Tom and Marie. So hopefully they're trying to log back in. This would take a moment here to do a plug for broadband, rural expansion of broadband internet. Tom and Marie are in one of those areas that could use more internet capability there. I've been out to Tom's, and we have one of Tom's kids here joining us. I don't know if you would want to pipe in on that or not, if you know more about that rotation. But yeah, I was wondering about that myself, if the oats winter kill on their own, and then at what point does he actually plant that with only 2-year rotation? What point does he actually plant that mixture, that cocktail of crops? I'm not quite sure myself. That was one of my questions. So we can go back and visit that one. And is there any other questions that maybe the group can answer in there? If not, we'll go ahead and roll on to the disease question, and hopefully we'll get the live Tom and Maria back here while that's playing. So we'll go ahead and roll that.
Gary?
Oh, there they are. There they are. Okay, we've got.
Sorry about that. We have an unstable internet connection.
Yeah, I've mentioned that about to folks already. Let's see if we can. We'll like catch you quick while we've got you. There was questions about how you do that rotation with the cover crops when you plant.
And Jerry, could you put up that picture of the oat cover with the soil?
Yeah, go ahead and start talking about it, and I'll get that.
So again, just to clarify, right after I dig, when the garlic's all off, you know, the ground is it's lifted, it's mixed with straw, it's got some black soil on top. I'll hand seed like 4 or 5 species of cover crop, and usually the rain works it in and gets it germinated, so I don't have to till the garden again. And then that next spring, the rye is starting to head out. I'll mow that, and then the clover comes through. I'll mow that. That's what I plow down in August, and then I plant oats on the soil after I'm done plowing in the end of August. I don't want that bare soil condition through the month of September and October and into November. So this is what I end up planting into. The oats are fairly light, and I run that cultivator through here, marking the 7 rows at a time. And if you notice on this particular picture over on the left side, there's two strips that are a little darker. So that was the part of the SFA trials are to plant at different times. So I marked all the rows with that cultivator, but then by the time I planted my November planting, the trench had kind of vanished from the rain and it leveled off. So I had to remark these rows by hand. And off to the lawn in the left, if you look close, there's a kind of a push cultivator, single wheel cultivator. I just, with a point on it, I had to remark the rows to plant. So the ground's loosened with the plow, busted up with the disc, seed oats on top, let the rain take it. And then when I'm ready to plant, I come right into this condition and mark the rows. And the oat cover doesn't really bother, doesn't get in the way for planting. There's no problem at all.
And then the oats winter kill?
The oats will winter kill. And I guess, you know, back to the soil health principles. So September, October, and this is, I think this picture was in November. So there's another 2.5 months where we've got some root activity in the soil here. And, you know, from the soil health standpoint, the roots are going down about 3 times the depth of the top. So I got a 4 to 6 inch oat growth on the surface. I might have roots down 12, 18 inches. And what that's doing is it's on the root of each plant, it exudes sugars for the microbial action to feed on. And the more you could keep your biology in your soil alive, the more nutrients are released from the soil with this microbial action. So the live roots are really feeding the microbes. And so for about 2.5 months here, if I was just bare and it's 90 degrees or 80 degrees and the soil's drying out and it's baking,
Oh.
You know, I kind of hurt my microbial activity. And the one thing with garlic, you know, this is my way to try to, I mean, aside from plowing, I try to get cover back right away.
Great. Well, Tom's a good evangelist. Well, you're breaking up a bit, Tom, there. So Tom's a good evangelist for our soil health principles. And I think we're going to hit on some of that again. I'm going to go ahead and roll the next video, or the next part of the video that has to do with diseases, if I can find it. Here we go.
As far as disease issues with garlic, I've been raising garlic since 2000, and we've had the one problem that everybody heard about and most of us got, and that was in 2012. It was Astor's yellows. Thank you. I was thinking the bloat, garlic bloat, nematode. 2012 was the year where we had the Astor's yellows. It was called Astor's yellow phytoplasm. It was a very warm spring, and apparently the leaf hoppers were blowing up from the south. And usually in March you get some freezing nights to kill these leaf hoppers. That wasn't happening. Every every night was above freezing, so the leaf hoppers flourished. The plants looked pretty good up until mid-June, and I remember looking at my patch and it was very hot, and all of a sudden the plants started to yellow off pretty quick, and we started digging them, and they were nice size, but they had a smell to it, and they were infected with this phytoplasm, some type of virus, and that took me down in 12 and 13. I went through all my garlic and thought that if I could see a clove that looked normal, I could replant that and not have an infected plant the next year. Well, it turned out a lot of stuff that I replanted was infected as well. So it was a couple-year hit. And other growers, some growers missed out on that, some got it. Most of us got it to some extent. Other than that, there's been no other disease issues that I've seen that affect production or insect problems. So as far as raising this naturally or organically, it's very easy because I don't use any spray for weed control. The nutrients that I put on, this ground has been manured very heavily in the past with chicken manure when we used to raise chickens when the kids were here. So the phosphorus and potash levels are very high. I have tested the soil and found recently my sulfur level was a little low, as was boron and manganese. And so I've added those three nutrients in the past couple of years, and those products were organically approved minerals, naturally sourced mineral products. So those are back into the soil, and I think I'm pretty decent now on fertility. Nitrogen is a big, garlic's a big user of nitrogen, so we're doing some trials with Jerry. I think we'll talk about that later. But we're doing some nitrogen trials, putting some nitrogen on in early May. However, I try to use that plow down clover or soybeans prior to garlic sometimes as a nitrogen source. It's just a matter, is that available when the garlic needs it, or does it come later? And so we're kind of playing with that idea. Garlic bloat nematode, yeah. Every year we test for the garlic bloat nematode. So we'll take 5 or 6 plants out of this patch, take the ones that are the smaller looking plants, the ones that aren't maybe doing as well, and send them up to the plant disease clinic at the U of M and get tested for garlic bloat nematode. So far we've not tested positive for that disease. And so what Jerry and the SFA is trying to do, which is a good plan, is to advertise that the seed stock that we're selling from Minnesota is bloat nematode free. And so we could hang our hat that we've got a good seed stock here from the Minnesota growing area.
So I do want to do one little clarification on that before we turn it back over to Becky for questions. We're actually saying that it's the crop has been tested for garlic bloat nematode to get to the point where we could actually say that it's nematode free. We'd have to get into a whole certification inspection program. So what we're saying for now is that it's been tested, and we encourage every grower who has received a negative test on the bloat nematode to advertise that and let people know, because that is one disease you really do not want to bring onto your property. And we also, I think I do prayers and sacrifices and whatever, that we would never have the Aster Yellows apocalypse again. It was a fluke. It never happened before in the upper Midwest. And hopefully we won't ever have those perfect storm conditions again to have the bloat nematode, the Aster Yellows. And I would encourage people to diversify. I didn't sell garlic at all in 2012, had no income from garlic because of that. and greatly reduced income like Tom the following year. So Becky.
Yeah, Tom, somebody had asked back when you were talking about oats if you have a favorite variety that you prefer.
I think the one that grows the best for me is the porcelains. I like the Romanian red.
Wait, Tom. They're asking about your variety of oats.
Oats.
Oh, the variety of oats. I'm sorry. No, it's just whatever's available. It isn't. We're not harvesting them for feed or anything. So it's just a cover crop. So any type of oats as a cover.
Okay, and then I see Melissa and Chris are having a discussion here about, well, let me read what Melissa wrote here. I have had a diverse cover crop on a new area all summer. I am thinking of mowing, then covering the soil with a silage tarp for 6 weeks, then planting into that with no further plowing. Has anyone done, and this is a new word to me, occultation before planting garlic? Do you want to comment on that, Tom?
My only concern, Melissa, is when you cover the ground with the tarp, and I think the same issue comes up when you use like a black plastic mulch. I don't know what's going to happen with the biology in your soil when you're doing that. The ground, the soil temperatures are probably going to raise. The oxygen might be limited, rainfall might be limited. I guess I wouldn't do it on a real big scale. I'd maybe try it on a small scale. I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to decay the cover kind of with the silage process, but and it might work very well doing that, but I'd have a little concern about the soil biology with the higher temperature and what's happening there.
Anything else, Becky?
There were just a couple more. Less weeds was Melissa's goal, of course. And Chris commented that the ground does get hot and basically cooks the covered areas. So there's a little discussion going on there.
Great. I love it. One of the nice things about Zoom is you can talk during class and it doesn't really disturb anybody. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and run right on into the next video. And oh boy. Yep, all about varieties.
This would be Lourdes Italian. It's an artichoke family, soft neck. I like that one because it yields fairly well. Like I said, for every pound that you save back, you could get 8 to 10 pounds return. A lot of people don't like growing Lourdes or the soft neck, and I've got the same issues. And if we pan down in here, anytime you get a stem like this, you're going to have a nice, pretty decent bulb under there, probably a good 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 inch bulb. But occasionally with Lourdes, you get some stems that are about like a pencil, and for whatever reason they didn't grow real nice, and so we're going to end up with some small bulbs that are 2 inch or less. And that's one of the issues with the Lourdes and Enchilium. It seems like we run the gamut of nice size to poor size. Whereas you get into chestnut red, this is the next, this is a purple stripe family. They're all pretty consistent. When you get a stem like this, that's going to produce a pretty decent bulb. And they're all pretty consistent. Same with the porcelains. They all grow very consistently. So you can see the color difference, and the chestnut is fairly tall compared to the Lourdes. And then we've got Susan Marie, and this is it's starting to brown off on the tips. This one matures a little quicker than the other porcelains. Very interesting flavor to that. When we would sample at the Garlic Fest, one of the gals that took a bite of that described it as peppery, and I go, there you go. It was a real strong black pepper flavor. which is nice. That's why I keep that one growing. Here's a couple rows of Enchilium red, very similar to Lourdes Italian. One thing with the artichoke and the softneck, sometimes you get this stem that bulges out here, and I think Carl Rosen was talking about cold, a cold problem when that gets cold in the spring. So you end up with kind of a scape type seed bulb in the stem, which is kind of a anti-quality factor. Romanian red is a porcelain, grows very robustly, as does Georgia Fire. Fire actually is consistent, but it doesn't get as big as like the Romanian. On a decent year, we could get up to some 3-inch bulbs on Romanian. Fire is usually in that 2 1/4, 2 1/2 range. Russian red is a rocambole, and it's a shorter hardneck, very good flavored garlic. One of my favorite eating garlics for raw eating. Again, that seems to have some variability in size. German Extra Hardy is a real nice white porcelain. That's very uniform. As you could see on the Hardy, there's only one leaf. One leaf is dried off, the other leaf is drying. So this one is a later maturing plant. Again, it's July 3rd, and we're pretty green yet. So this one might be a couple weeks away from harvest. So some of these varieties get pulled before others. Georgia Crystal, you could see that one is starting to mature a little quicker than the Hardy. One leaf is totally dry, the other one's going, and 2 rows of that. And then Armenian, that's another nice big porcelain. Grows very nice, comes through the mulch very good. Big cloves, big bulbs, and that too is a little bit later harvesting. So I got my later harvesting varieties on this end. Usually the ones up there go first.
Okay. Becky, how are we looking here?
I didn't see any new questions, at least that they've posted. They may have some.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to the harvest video and check that out.
We'll go in here and we'll dig a hardneck. Let's see, let's grab a Romanian. That's kind of a common one. So this is the Romanian red, and so my soil is very clayey, but when that gets lifted, I'll just grab the bulb and shake it like that, and then that's getting hung up to dry. Certain people will take water and spray the soil off with water. I don't agree with that, because you're going to get water in these leaves here, and I don't think that's a good plan to try to store a bulb that's been sprayed with water. I just soon let it naturally dry. The downside is we've got soil out on the outer wrapper that has to get cleaned off once it's dry, and so we usually try to peel one layer of leaf off. This is Enchilium red, soft neck, and you could see we're fairly moist under there. We've had about 3 inches of rain in the last 10 days, but the soil is coming off pretty nice. So again, we'll just take this plant and hang it to dry like that, and then clean it later. Trim the roots, brush the soil off, pull one layer of leaf, and get it saleable. So when you look at artichoke species versus a porcelain, one thing you'll notice, you've got a lot more cloves on the artichoke compared to the porcelain. So a lot of people don't like growing the soft neck because they don't do so well in this colder type climate in Minnesota. But when you look at what yields, the soft neck species in Enchilium and Lourdes Italian, they yield so much better than the porcelain. And what I mean by that is, for every pound of seed that you plant here, you'll get back about 8 to 10 pounds of garlic. For every pound of porcelain you get back, plant, you're going to get about 4 to 5 pounds. So your yield is much better with these because you got a lot more cloves in a pound compared to the porcelains. The porcelains come up real nice in the spring because the cloves are big and hardy, and they'll bolt right through the mulch, where these, the cloves are a little smaller, so they struggle a little bit. The plants aren't as hardy, they need a little help getting through the mulch. The other thing to look at on harvest would be, if you count the leaves, we've got 2 leaves here that are dried off totally. The 3rd leaf is still kind of green, 4th leaf is green, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. We've got about 8 leaves here, and 5 of them are still pretty green. This one's starting to yellow, and so it's July 3rd. I'm guessing in 10 days we're going to be, this one will be all yellow, the next one will start turning. So once we get about 4 of those leaves turning yellow, it's going to be time to dig, and that's going to be about mid-July.
How are we looking there, Becky?
Well, it's mid-July. Are you harvesting?
My plan was to start on Monday. So yeah, if the ground dries out, I'll get some of those early maturing varieties out Monday.
Somebody is asking, Melissa's asking, can you chat about what you learned about whether soft or hard necks keep longer in general?
Yeah, the soft necks store much better than the hard necks. We will have them around here till May or June of the next year and still be eating them. The bulbs aren't quite as fresh, or the cloves there might be a little softer. Sometimes you'll see a little green in the middle of the clove, but the hard necks, depending on the season and what variety, February, March, they're going to start getting punky and uneatable.
Well, and I'll jump in on that too. And I think the season itself, I like to compare garlic to wine. You know, every year has a different flavor to the grapes and all that sort of thing. It's kind of a pretentious comparison, but the season, I think, can really affect the storability, because I've likewise had some porcelain garlics that we were serving at lunch for our harvest crew a year later, and we were eating those porcelains, and they were great. This year, our porcelains were done, 2 months ago. So I think every year it's different. We didn't change our curing process. So I think it was actually the season itself. And there's been different studies out, and I think we don't allow enough for the variability of the season itself. you know, so I'm always a little conditional when I tell my customers how long these are going to store.
We are in northern Minnesota, and we just assumed that soft nuts weren't going to work for us. What would you recommend trying? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess it's worth a try. You know, um, like I say, they store better, and it just seems like because there's not a lot of people growing them, that seems to be a little bit of a demand for them in certain places because they are not quite as prevalent.
I had one more question, Tom. When you dug up your garlic and took a look, you commented on how many green leaves were left, but what are you looking for when you're looking at that bulb?
For maturity, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I just kind of look at the appearance of the plant and half yellow type of thing. Calendar says it's mid-July. I know on some of the soft necks, because the stem is a little weaker, sometimes you'll see them tip over. You know, that's an indicator. On some of the hard necks, if you miss a scape, if they start standing straight up, I think that's kind of an indicator that the plant is ready to come out. And I've got some scapes out there now that are standing straight in the air, you know, so.
I was reading, Jerry, a comment on the Facebook group page that you said determining harvest is more of an art than a science.
Yes.
So what would you and Tom recommend? What are your key art tips for when do we harvest?
Well, I'm very similar to what Tom does in terms of bottom leaves. I really look at bottom leaves. And what I'm thinking of is that those bottom leaves are the outside wrappers on the bulb itself. And I like that they're drying down some, but that those inner wrappers are still green, the top leaves, because that's going to give me that really nice package when it's cured properly. And the next video is going to talk a little bit about curing, so that it will affect that storability and just the attractiveness of the bulb, I think. And at the same time, it's like some sort of sedatives or something around July, something to calm me down a little bit so that I don't. I have called crew calls, you know, to have a harvest crew come out and canceled it the night before. And, you know, if you want to really start demoralizing your crew, that's a good way to do it. But it's just like, I'll look at the garlic the night before and go, no, it's not ready yet. And then back off. And the other thing that Tom and I and a few other growers face, not this year, is the garlic festival. Well, some idiot schedules that thing the second Saturday in August. And we have to be ready. We've got that 2-3 week curing time, plus some cleaning and maybe some packaging and everything else to get ready. So I think all of us have been known to pull at least some of the garlic early.
Yeah, and I think you know, for the garlic fest, so I would probably shoot for that, you know, July 20th date, calendar date, and so say if I got 3-4 rows of a porcelain, and I think, well, I'm going to sell a couple rolls from the garlic fest, I need so many pounds, I'll dig those and then maybe wait a couple weeks for the other ones and dig them end of July, early August, and just figure these aren't going to the garlic fest. These are going to be sold later on. Mm-hmm. And the idea then is, you know, if you could leave it in a little longer prior to that bulb opening up, you might possibly be putting a little more size and weight into the garlic bulb itself. And so digging too early, you maybe miss out on some size potential. Digging too late, you're going to have some quality issues if the bulb opens up and you have less wrappers on the outside.
Anything else, Becky?
I think that's it for the questions.
Okay. There's a little clip here about when to know that your curing is complete that I thought it'd be good to share.
The whole plant would be pretty much yellow, and the leaves are crackly. You could tell too how the outside skin comes off the garlic. If it's still wrapped up tight to the bulb, it's then a little too wet. And with the dehumidified drying facility, it gets a more uniform dryness to the bulb. So I do like that. I guess advice for new growers, probably the advice I got back in 1999 from Joel Gerardin is start small. You got to get a kind of handle on how bad the weeding's going to be, how much time you got for doing the scapes, getting planted on time. The other thing is storing the plants, hanging them, drying them. You got a proper facility for that. So kind of get your feet wet, see what you think as far as the labor involved. I know there are some planters out on the market where you could plant the garlic, which is time saving, and the harvesting is pretty decent, but cleaning and prepping the garlic is a lot of labor.
Okay. So any questions on curing there? I always like to say that when I clip, and Tom and I both cure with the roots and the stalks on. We don't clip anything before that. And again, I think that's the difference between commodity garlic, one of the differences between commodity garlic and gourmet premium garlic. We're wanting to sap every bit of energy out of the stalk and the roots back into that bulb. And what I like to say is that when I clip that stalk, and I clip about an inch above the bulb, Tom, I'm not sure how, I don't remember how much you clip off or leave.
About the same, yeah, probably half to an inch.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I clip that, there's no liquid.
Right.
You know, all that liquid has been stored inside the bulb itself. It's not outgassing anymore. And that's, yeah, we're really done curing at that point.
Yep.
And you know, there's no harm in, as long as you're not going to have really heavy freezes out in your curing shed, to just storing that way and cleaning as you have time.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the main thing too, Jerry, is, you know, in southern Minnesota, we're always very high humidity in July and August. And so your curing facility, if you got an old shed or whatever, my advice, keep the sun off the garlic, get the doors open. On one of my old sheds, I've even gone up on the roof and then bolted a couple pieces of steel and propped them up with a 2x4. And same with some of the sidewalls, just to try to get natural air movement through there so that they don't get moldy or black spotted from curing in a high humidity environment.
And I do use a dehumidifier as well in an insulated shed.
Yeah, that's very good. That's the best.
Well, and you can actually overdo it. You have to really monitor it so that you're not over drying. I'm not trying to dehydrate here. I'm just trying to cure. So
right.
When I upgraded the dehydrator, I was like, oh, we got to slow this thing down. I see that Melissa has done a little plug for her planter that people can rent from her. And I've been anxious to see that planter myself. So
me down, Melissa. I'll rent it this fall.
There we go. That's how this works. So at this point, we're coming up on our hour-and-a-half allotment for this in a few minutes. We have a bonus track. For the price of the ticket you paid for here, you're going to actually get a bonus track that has to do with some of the field trials we're doing. But before we launch into that, if folks want to stay for that part, I find it fascinating, of course. But I definitely want to thank Jameson Johnson did the filming on this. And he's somebody, a new staff person with SFA, and we've actually, that's the bulk of his work right now, is going out and shooting this kind of thing for different SFA events. And I think he's, for throwing him into it, he's doing a pretty darn good job. And I want to thank Becky, and hopefully she's going to stick around with us on this next bit, for at the last minute jumping in and being our questions monitor. And then, of course, Tom and Maria, your expertise is greatly appreciated and taking the time to work with us on this. And I've actually tasted their black garlic before, and it tastes just as awful as all the other black garlic I've ever had. It's not for everybody. I'm sorry, I had to pick on that one. So I'm going to, if it's okay, I think I'll go ahead and run that clip on the field trials. It's not very long. And if you want to stick around for that, we'd love to have you. And we're waving at Chris's kid here. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead to that. Let me share that clip.
Okay, so right now we're standing in Chestnut Red, and I've got a treatment here for the Minnesota Premium Garlic Project, and one of the treatments was spring fertilizer, and this particular, from this stake down to that next stake, had no spring fertilizer. This is Chestnut Red, planted the same time last fall. This particular row had fertilizer, and what it was Chilean nitrate, 6 ounces mixed in a 5-gallon pail of water. Then on first week in May, I went along the row and poured that nitrate on the plant. And physical observance tells me this looks a little better, looks a little healthier plant compared to this row. Just seems like it has a little more bushiness to it. Last year, the nitrogen study did show some benefit for putting nitrogen on in early May. The year before, it didn't. And like I was telling you, I use a red clover plow down. In fact, that's some of my weed issues this year, is the red clover is coming back through. So when we did a soil test, nitrate test this spring, this particular plot tested at 26 parts per million on the chestnut. The lowest plot was about 17. Those numbers are fairly low, kind of borderline. If we were raising corn, we'd side dress nitrogen on for the corn if we had numbers in the low 20s, below 20. So, but for garlic, I think my nitrogen is coming a little later with that decay of the red clover, and it's maybe not at the time that the plant really needs it. So putting on this Chilean nitrate early looks to me like it's having an influence on the growth of the plant, and that's something that we're studying in various areas of the state. But it might be something that we would do full scale if we're seeing some yield results here. The other treatments Jerry has got us working on is the fall mulch. We left down at that end, we left some 60 plants unmulched in the fall versus the mulch on. Usually in the spring they do come up a little faster. They look a little more healthy because the soils are warmed up quicker, they dry out quicker. Whether or not that had any yield effect, the last 2 years it hasn't shown any yield effect. And the other thing we've done this year with the scape, like I said, normally I'll come along and snap the scape off he wanted a trial where we snap off a section and then pull a section. And so on the chestnut that worked. I was able to pull them out. It comes right out of the stalk of the plant. But on porcelains, they wouldn't pull out. They just would snap off. So there's probably not going to be any difference there.
All right, so those are the field trials we're working on. And for those of you who didn't catch it, it's Chilean nitrate from the country of Chile. It's actually like a caliche mud that has extremely high in nitrogen. It's like a 151602, I think. Mm-hmm. It is organic approved, but you have to like do certain things first and have soil tests because it is so high in nitrogen, and you can get in trouble with it. So we're not necessarily recommending you do Chilean nitrate. We're just using it because we really want to give a hit of nitrogen to see if it's going to make a difference. So any other questions or anything about those field trials?
The planting date, I guess we didn't get into.
Oh, we didn't, yeah.
The last year, it showed a pretty good benefit of planting in September for the hardneck. The softneck that I used, the lowers didn't seem to matter, but my purple stripe showed quite a yield kick with the September planting versus my normal mid to late October planting. So I guess because of that, I'm maybe trying to move up the planting start end of September type thing and get a little more fall growth apparently.
Yeah, and this is with the planting timing, what we're shooting for is we're planting, those of us who are participating in these trials, we're planting mid-September, then mid-October, and then as late as we dare go into November, when some of the folks that are further north, they're like, okay, we're going to get snow, we're going to get frost, ground's going to freeze. And actually, when I did November planting last time, I was having to crack through a layer of frost in there to get them in the ground. What we found was, yes, especially with hardnecks, that September planting did better than the October planting. And then there wasn't generally between us a lot of difference between October and November. It was kind of a wash. And what I think that is telling us, and we're not going to say definitively until we've had two more this year and next year with this, is the window for planting may be broader than we think it is. You know, we've always talked about mid-October, but it may be that it's actually, we can start earlier. And, you know, by trial and error, we've kind of found out that you can go pretty late, those of us who don't get it in the ground as quick. So I think that's a benefit. The risk, of course, is if you plant early and you have a really warm fall and that plant really comes up big and then it freezes back, well, you've expended a whole bunch of energy. So it's a trade-off. It can be a trade-off. It's a risk, just like anything else in farming. Becky, have we got anything else?
You know, I was listening so closely, I forgot to read.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Chris commented, and I agree. We wouldn't mind planting and not getting frostbite. I have to admit, it was so freeing at the SFA conference when you guys mentioned a broader window, because last year, our planting weekend, it was snowing in northern Minnesota, and just totally, you know, who likes that? So
Right.
We're planning on late September and looking forward to it.
What's the latest you've gone, Tom, Maria, before, you know, we forced you to plant in November? Have you ever planted in November before that?
No, I think we try to be done in October every year, so.
And you wait to put the mulch on. You don't feel like you have to get mulch on right away after planting.
No, I could do that in November.
Yeah.
I just soon let some of the fall rains get through the mulch or get into the soil to get the plant started. So
Right.
get the root started. So.
Yeah.
And I think there was one fall where the ground was so dry, I did put a sprinkler on the plot in the fall because we just weren't getting any rain and the garlic was in dry soil.
Yeah.
And I think that helped get the roots started before it froze up.
Well, we're at coming up on our scheduled end time here. And again, I really appreciate Tom and Maria, your time with us and your expertise and being such gracious hosts. I have learned, folks have told me in the past, I'm going to leave this running for a bit, even though we're going to go away, because folks want to go back and read the chat. And maybe we're listening so much that they didn't get a chance to do that. And the recording does not give the chat. So I'm going to let it keep running for a bit, but I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to go ahead and sign out. Thanks, everybody. Tom, Maria, any last words?
Well, just want to say thanks to you too, Jerry. And Jameson did a real fine job when he came out here a week ago videoing, and that was a good experience. And keep up the good work with the Minnesota Premium Garlic Project. Us growers appreciate it. So thanks for all your guys' work.
Thank you. And thanks to the Department of Ag and Sustainable Farming Association for supporting this. All right. Thanks, folks.
All right. See ya.
Thank you. Bye now.
So let's look at the chats. I should write Melissa's email down.